My name is Courtney Harge, rhymes with charge, very simple. I am here from Fractured Atlas to talk to you about something that I enjoy, liberating the artist or eliminating practical barriers to making your work. This is my first time at SphinxConnect, but I am actually a Michigan native. Even though I live now in Brooklyn, but I'm originally from Highland Park, Saginaw, right? Went to school at U of M, so I'm just happy to be home, frankly. I'm really enjoying it. So, who am I? Why should you listen to me? That's always a great place to start, right? So like I said, I'm Courtney, Michigan native. I've actually been making art as part of my everyday life since I was 14 years old. So for the last 2 years, I've been doing great things. I wish I was only 16, right? And I'm the member advisor for Fractured Atlas. And what that means is it's my job to provide support, advice, any type of anything that we can offer you to help you make the art that you want to make. I also develop this type of content so that you don't have to talk to me to get the advice, that you can engage with things that can help support you in making the art that you want to do. I'll also talk a bit about what Fractured Atlas's services are, which will provide help to you in making the work that you want to make. And I am an independent theater producer and director. I started my own company in 2011 called Colloquy Collective, based out of Brooklyn, New York. I'm going to talk to you a bit about that as well. So when I am not making art or asking you all to make your art, I'm trying to be internet famous. So if you can tweet some of the brilliant things I say at any of these handles, that would be great, because again, internet fame is important to me. But we like to talk, Fractured Atlas and myself personally are very active on social media. We want to hear your concerns, so these are great ways to reach us after we're done here today, okay? And forgive me, I've got notes here, microphone, and this wonderful clicker, so I'm going to just be moving, I feel, in a few different directions while this happens, okay? So here's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Introduction, that's where we are, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to talk about Fractured Atlas specifically. What I mean by liberating the artists, I'm going to offer you a bit of what I like to call myths and magic. Kind of the myths are the ways people approach their art and ways that Fractured Atlas would like to help you have a bit of magic to counteract those myths. Some more practical tips and tools, and we'll talk about developing community, and then we'll have questions. If you have questions while we're going, feel free to raise your hand. I'm happy to engage them, but I just want you to know there'll be some dedicated time for questions a bit later. Awesome. So, what is Fractured Atlas? We are a nonprofit technology company that works with artists. We are also an art service organization. Basically, we serve artists by building technological solutions to your problems. We are a national organization. We work with individual artists and arts organizations all over the country. So if there's something you need, we are here to help provide it. We do that through primarily 4 major programs: fiscal sponsorship, Space Finder, Artfully, and liability insurance. Fiscal sponsorship is our fundraising platform. It allows you to receive funds that would normally be available only to 501c3s. I'm going to talk in depth about each of these programs a bit later. Space Finder connects artists with venues. Insurance, particularly liability insurance, which helps you protect your stuff, the people who work with you, the people who work for you, and you. And Artfully, which is ticketing and customer relationship management software. Again, we're going to go through more in depth, have some opportunities to talk about it. In this pile of words is our mission statement. It says that we empower artists, arts organizations, and other cultural stakeholders by eliminating practical barriers to artistic expression to foster a more agile and resilient system. Like, what does that mean? Right? It's a lot of language to say ultimately what we want to do is liberate the artist. We want to build things so that you can make art and not feel burdened by the kind of stuff that gets in the way. I am a firm believer that the world is a better place for having you and your art in it, full stop. Doesn't matter the type of art you're making, doesn't matter the type of work you want to do. If it's important to you, it's important to us. It's important to me. And I also believe that the reasons people end up not making the work that they want is those reasons are far more mental than practical. They're generally like connected to these limiting thoughts. Things like, I don't know where to start, right? I don't know where to start generally implies that there's only one place to start. If I just found the right location, if I just found the ideal space, if I just found the right place to be, then I would do my work. And frankly, that's not true. The way to start is just to do. And how you start is very rarely how you end, or even where you start very rarely ends up being the thing that you want to do. You can always iterate. You can always do something, find out you don't like it, and then do something different. But so many times we get focused on where do I start, where is the right way to do it, that we get analysis paralysis. We stop doing things. Next is, I'm not good at the business stuff. Show of hands, who here thinks they're good at the business stuff? Okay, good. We've got some hands, but nobody like ran up there. Nobody was like, me. No, because nobody thinks they're good at it. Frankly, everybody's like, I'll do it. I'm like passable, or I can like, for the most part, people are like, maybe. And knowing that everybody feels that way, one, can be helpful, and two, it actually is not magic. Doing the business stuff requires a different skill set, but your creativity, your problem solving, you actually already have the skills to be able to manage it. It's just thinking a little differently. And in some ways, it's easier than focusing on the creativity. Like, really building a budget, and we can talk more specifically about it, but building a budget is just saying, you're just writing a list of what things cost. That is it. That you aren't making something new. You're saying, I want to rent a space, and it will cost me this much money to rent a space. And then you write that down. I've just built a budget for you. In the sense of, people get caught up. They hear budget and they think it has to be a right number. It has to be this thing. One of the things I constantly say to artists is that numbers don't have feelings. Because people say things like, well, that feels too high, right? That feels like it's too much. Numbers don't have feelings. The number just is a thing. It's just a representative. It just is something that costs. So by being able to say, I want to do this thing, all you have to do is find out how much it costs to do that thing, realizing that the number has no regard, it does not feel anything. You can just write the number down. But that's where the mental stuff gets in the way. That's where we start saying, well, I'm not good, or this isn't the right number, or I haven't done something. And I promise you, you don't have to become a different person to manage the business of your art. I don't want to ask my friends for money. First off, if you aren't asking your friends for money, I probably am. I enjoy fundraising. So just know that not wanting to ask your friends for money is great for me. Probably not as great for you. But fundraising is often the biggest hurdle to making art happen, right? People in general are uncomfortable talking about money, right? That conversation can be hard. But this really comes from people associating fundraising with begging. People thinking that, well, who am I to ask you for your money? I know what you've got. Why would you support my project? Why just all this doubt, right? Fundraising is simply an opportunity for people to engage with your work. It's a conversation. It's not panhandling. One of the ways that I like to reframe my fundraising asks is this. I am doing all the work. Like I said, I'm a theater producer. So I'm picking shows, I'm renting space, I'm hiring actors, I'm holding rehearsals, I'm buying props, I'm doing these things, and your name will go on it, maybe bigger than mine. All you have to do is write a check. That's fantastic. For 10 minutes of work, you get to put your name all over this, right? You get to engage with this, and the story gets to be told, or this work gets to be done, the song gets to be sung, these people get to be artists, they get to perform what they want to do, and all you have to do for that is click a link, or write a check, or have this conversation with me, or tell your friends. Like, that's it. And that's a conversation, right? This beautiful thing will happen, will be out in the world because of something you did, and you don't even really have to get out of bed. You don't have to get off your phone. I am helping you, right? That is the mindset, because again, great things can happen. The world is better for your art and for you being in it. So make sure that people support that, that recognize that. Also, if you approach people when you fundraise with the, well, I don't know why you support that, they don't know either, so they won't. You are going to be the most excited about the thing you have to make, right? So if you know that you are the 10, you have to make sure that the people below you, the people who you're talking to, can at least get to a 7. But if you're 10, if you're the max, and you're really only communicating at like a 4, how are people going to be excited about what you have to do? Making art won't pay my bills. Nope, probably won't. That is all it is, but that's also not the point, right? It can be. Making art pays Beyonce's bills. That's fantastic for her, right? There are people in the world where art pays their bills. And it doesn't have to do that. When I like to joke, when I was 14, I came out to my parents as wanting to be a theater person. And yes, it was a coming out conversation, right? I wanted to devote my life to the theater. My mother, there were tears, I'm not gonna lie, because she was like, but you could do anything. You know, how will you eat? How will you make any money? How will you do things? And I was like, she's like, and nobody makes it, quote unquote. You're not gonna make $1 million, you're not gonna do that. What does it look like? And I was like, yeah, but I can probably make what you make. And I said that, I mean, I can probably do what I need to do to raise a family that you've done and to support your kids through college, and I can probably do that, because I don't have to make a few $1 million. I would like to. Universe, I want to make $1 million. But to make my art, I can build a life similar to what my parents have built. I can build a life similar to what, quote unquote, average people build. And I get to do a thing that I love. And so the conversation that art won't necessarily pay your bills is real, but it doesn't have to. You can scale your work up or down. You can scale your possibilities up or down to be able to support yourself as a person and as an artist. What are some limiting thoughts you've encountered? Anybody? What are some things that you've struggled with in wanting to do your art? Hands up. Yes?
How can I put 40 hours into what I want to do and also, pay my bills?
That's fair. Right, so it's basically like, how can you have 2 full-time jobs, right? That's fair. That's a good thing. I would think one of the ways to think about it is that you don't necessarily have to have 2 full-time jobs. You don't have to do everything to make your art happen. You just have to do something. So if you only have 40 hours a week to work, and most of those 40 hours are for the job that pays your bills, the job that allows you to eat, eating is important, what are the 2 hours to start that you can do to get you somewhere? Even if it's 2 hours of practicing. You get people often, and this happens to me too, people often get into, well, I can't do the big thing, so I'm not gonna do the little things. I can't perform all the time, so I just don't know when I'm gonna fit into practicing, because like, what am I practicing for? And sometimes just doing an hour of art-related things. I'm gonna take an hour today and start a Facebook page just talking about my work. I'm gonna take an hour today and write out a 1-page like business plan of like, if I had a project, what would it look like? People think that because it's not a full-time thing that it may not count. And that is it's a limiting thought, right? It's still valuable. 2 hours of art making is still greater than 0 hours of art making, right? Half an hour of art making is greater than 0 hours of art making. So if you can find ways to scale what you want to do, if you can do something smaller or even something slightly bigger than you thought, it will give you a sense of what you're capable of, and it'll give you momentum to do more. And then you'll find out that maybe eventually your 35 of your 40 hours are spent making art because you've started by doing 2 hours. Any other limiting thoughts?
I'm kind of on the other side of this because I had a music career, but my limiting thought is, and I've got a mentor who's going to be helping me with this. I can't figure out how to build an audience with social media. Because you know when social media first came out 10 years ago, it was so expensive. You know, classes
Right.
were expensive.
Well, social media is just again, it's a place to have a conversation. I'm frequently an advocate for making something that feels different familiar, right? So if social media is a separate thing, it's like, I don't know how to work the internets, right? But what is the thing you do know how to do? Right? But it's a real thing. We get this call all the time. Like, what is the thing you know how to do? Do you know how to talk to people? Right? So what would you say if you were having a conversation with someone who likes the thing that you like, or you want to show the thing that you like? Type that and put that on the internet. And then people will respond to it, right? Because sometimes it's just starting at doing a thing. And then once you see what you're comfortable with, then you can figure out how to do it better. But first you have to get into it. It's in the same way that nobody starts playing an instrument well, right? You know, not very few people picked up I played the recorder in 3rd grade because they made us all do that. I didn't pick it up. I was not a genius at it. But there were some people in that class who became actual musicians. But they just figured it out. And the point wasn't to make us the best recorder players. It was to make us familiar with this thing. And so that's true for everything. Yes?
As you're going through that process, this is connected to a limiting thought.
I'm fantastic.
Since nobody starts out really great, sometimes a limiting thought I have is like, what if I go public with my intention to do this thing and I'm kind of doing it at this level? I wish I could be doing it at a super high level, but I'm still on my process.
Right.
Are people gonna look at me and then just say, well, she sucks, and not pay attention to anything I do as I grow?
No, that's a good question. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound negative but isn't. When you first start, nobody's really watching. right? And that's comforting. And I'm saying that not that people aren't interested, because I'm certain they are. But when you're beginning, part of the reason you're beginning is because nobody's there yet. So you can make your mistakes. And the beauty of the internet is you can delete things. It's great. You can try it out there and you can see what's happening, or you can put it out there and somebody will respond to it. And you're like, oh, this is a thing. This is something that people want to talk about. Yeah, I can talk more about this. And then once your audience gets better, once your audience gets bigger, you will have gotten better. I know a bunch of people who were professional social media people who look back on their tweets from 2 years ago and are like, oh no, why did I do that? And they had giant followings and they're like, no, I don't know what happened. But they seemed professionals, right? They seemed to think, but they seemed to be the ones to know what was happening. And frankly, it's enjoy the fact that the people who follow you currently are probably your friends. They're rooting for you, partially because if you get famous, then they look real cool for having known you win. The hipster factor is a great tool in building your audience. These people want to be in there with you so that when you do blow up, they can look real cool for that. So connect with them. These are people who are interested in you, and ask them why. But it's all iterative. The very few mistakes are forever. But not doing something is. Right? You can take back something that you said on the internet. You can't promote something that you never said. So liberating the artist, what does that mean? There are two ways to kind of talk about liberating. You can be liberated from the burden of something, right? Scarcity mindset, fundraising anxiety, professionalization, that fear, people have feelings around that. Reinventing the wheel, isolation, tunnel vision, all things. I'm sure there are other things you can be liberated from. You can also be liberated to make art that matters. Ultimately, that's what Fractured Atlas wants you to do. We want to liberate you from the garbage on what is my right, your left, to make stuff on the other side. Just quick, shout them out. What are these things that you feel burdened by right now? What of this list? Or things that aren't up there? Anything? Fundraising anxiety is real. Yes.
Isolation.
Also isolation. Anything else? Any other things that you can be burdened by over there? Fear of professionalizing, which is fun. People are like, why do I fear that? But it's a very, very real thing. Alrighty. Oh, school funding. Yes. Yeah, there are reasons to believe that things will not be as funded as well as they used to be, right? We can talk about that too, but that's a real thing. That is, the fundraising anxiety is both fundraising anxiety and like I'm afraid to do it, and also like there's no funding out there, right? Those are very real things. All right. Again, I want to liberate you from those and liberate you to make art that matters. That is hopefully my goal. My goal with this is to give you some tools, give you some new ways to think about these things that may offer you a chance to make art that matters for you. Fantastic. So one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to, in the same way we talked about these limiting thoughts, I want to talk about some myths and offer you a little bit of magic in support of them. We're also going to then do some kind of tips and tools about like some more practical things. So first myth is this. I know we talked about fundraising anxiety, but the first myth is that money will solve your problems. And I'm going to say this is the biggest myth out there, and I'm going to tell you why. People frequently think that all they need is someone to finance their dream and it'll come true. And again, that's not wrong entirely. If you could find somebody rich to decide to bankroll what you do, like that would be great. But it's going to take a little bit of magic to adjust your mindset. And the magic is this: you have resources. We tend collectively to devalue the things that are already in our possession. The second we receive it, the second we own it, we stop thinking it's important. And we start focusing on what else we need, right? We overlook the stuff closest to us and start trying to reinvent the wheel to solve these problems. So I'm going to give you ways to assess what is on hand and to break down your problems in terms of what are the 3 hardest assets to replicate, right? Which are money, time, and knowledge. Those resources on hand. So all problems, I feel, all problems or needs can be met through a combination of these things, of money, time, and resources, right? Generally, to solve a problem, you need at least 2 of these 3 things. So for example, let's say you need to have something built, right? You're building a house, you're building a garage, you're building a shed, you need something built. If you're a carpenter, if you know how to do it, and you have the time to do it, you actually are going to spend less money, right? Because you have the know-how, you have the time. If you have none of the know-how, right, then you're going to have to throw time and resources, time and money at it, right? You're going to have to pay somebody, you're going to have to schedule it. That's how it's going to happen. And if you have the know-how and the money, you can probably get it done in less time, right? But in any of those scenarios, you have something, right? You have things to throw at this. You may not have all 3, and you may also realize that the only thing you have, like let's say the only thing you have is time. So are you going to acquire the know-how, or are you going to acquire the money? But money is not the thing that's going to solve your problem, right? It's a piece of the pie. And I think if you analyze your problems or analyze your needs, considering yourself, what do I have on hand? What do I already have access to? You may actually find that you need to only spend money where money solves the problem. That actually ultimately lowers your fundraising ask, right? That can help reduce your fundraising anxiety, because what you need may not be money. What you may also need is, more often, is know-how. Like, let's say you don't know how to build the thing, but your friend does and can provide you resources. Again, money hasn't solved your problem. And so sometimes we get so focused on, I don't have the money to X, we stop thinking about the things we have. The other thing I'd like to say is that money is not stuff. And what does that mean? Well, frequently, particularly my experience as a theater producer, right? A lot of times I need things. And so I think I need money to buy things. I need props, I need space, I need actors, right? But that's not true. What I need is the thing. I read somewhere this quote that stuck with me is, in fact, that nobody actually wants a 1/4-inch drill bit. What people want is a 1/4-inch hole, right? We get so focused on like, this is the tool to get me the thing, that we stop thinking about the thing. Money in this case is a 1/4-inch drill bit, right? But if you really want a 1/4-inch hole, right, that is your focus. And so sometimes, I always like to say, you can connect with small businesses, you can connect with people in your community that have resources, that have stuff. And you might be able to talk to them about getting access to the stuff in ways that aren't money focused. Because, again, money is not stuff. And then money is what you need to solve money-specific problems. Use the previous thing to assess if it's a money-specific problem. And that can help, for me, that helps eliminate a lot of my fundraising anxiety, because now that number that I need is smaller, and I have a better gauge of my resources, and I can negotiate with somebody. Like, if I think my printing costs are $3,000, just to throw something out there, it's like, okay, what I need is printing. So what if the person is saying, well, if I put an ad in your program, it'll only cost you $1,000. Okay, you're gonna print my programs. I just have to have some labeling that says you printed my programs, and I get to spend it for less. Like, now I can negotiate. But if I'm so focused on what I need is $3,000, I'm actually gonna miss my opportunity to get the thing I need. Myth number 2, to professionalize is to sell out. This myth is common because people attach a lot of meaning to professionalization. What they think it entails is like shiny corporate pitches, sleazy marketing campaigns, focus on making your work palatable to the audience who's willing to pay the most, right? As a result, people avoid doing simple things that would make their work easier, frankly. The magic here is, if it will go. Would you? Thank you. Yes. There you go. The magic here is you are magic. You only have to be as corporate as you want to be. You are in control of this. The age of the internet has shown us that there are audiences for everything. You just have to find yours. That may be harder, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It may be more work. You may have to throw more time at it, right? But you actually only have to be exactly as corporate as you wish to be. And you can make the work that you want to make. To talk about me for a minute, because what's one of my favorite topics, the things I produce are historical works by women of color, right? I restaged what was considered the first ever lynching play, originally written in 1914, last year, right? It is not a corporate piece, babe. Nobody wants to. AT&T is not funding lynching plays. Yet, those plays and my work on them was featured on NPR because it's the work that matters to me, because it is work that was important. People found me doing that work, right? Mostly because of the internet, frankly, but also because I was able to do the work that I wanted to do. And that was not selling out, right? I didn't minimize my message. I didn't talk about anything less than what I felt was important, and people still watched it. That is, for me, a key to understanding that, like, there is an audience out there for you. You just have to connect to it. Creating like budgets or sponsorship decks are really just means to tell the story you want to tell. You do not have to make your story palatable, quote unquote, for anybody else. There are opportunities you can't do necessarily, but those opportunities weren't for you anyway. That's an opportunity you didn't necessarily want. If the only way somebody's going to support you is by changing the message or by changing who you are, or changing a fundamental piece of your work, then that's not yours. You don't need it.
What you said is just very core for me right now. I'm actually having some transitions because I'm 50 now.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I'm any less of an artist. I'm just saying, but as you get older, obviously, you don't want to be changing what you've been developing for years.
Definitely. Yeah, and we can talk some more about that definitely toward the end. But you don't have to change. It can change the types of opportunities you get, but again, that's okay. There doesn't have to be a value judgment. If it's the work you want to make it. Go forward for me, please. Marketing is not a dirty word. It is not. It's the way you communicate your promise and uniqueness to your constituents. You are always in control of your message. Tell the story you want to tell. And what I'm doing right now is marketing, right? But I'm telling you something I believe in. I'm telling you what matters to me. It's connected to the place I work, and the reason I work there is because I believe in them, right? But this is just telling you the story that I think is important that you heard, regardless of who asked me to tell it, right? Professionalizing is a way to get people to listen to your message on your terms. And by that I mean having something clear, having something that people can access. And when I say access, again, it's not dumbing down. It's not even simplifying. Access is simply providing a door. It's providing a pathway from where they are to where you want them to be, right? So that means that whatever story you want to tell, whatever reason you want to make, the music you want to make, the art you want to make, the programming you want to make, you just have to tell people why. That doesn't mean you have to make it why for what they want. You tell them why this should matter to them. And the stronger and more compelling that case can be, the more likely you are to have success in making your work. Myth number 3. Focus on the art and the rest will fall into place. This tends to be where I lose some people, not gonna lie. I believe in making the art. The art is important, focus on it. Why I think it's a myth? Well, first, who agrees with me that this is a myth? Who disagrees with me? Who thinks this is real? It can be, it's okay. I can be wrong, I'm cool. The reason I think this is a myth, because I even got pushed back in my own company around this, is because people actually tend to operate with its inverse. Would you go forward for me? Which is because things haven't fallen into place, I didn't focus enough on the art. That feels more familiar, doesn't it? I haven't gotten the recognition, I haven't gotten this grant, I haven't gotten this thing or whatever, I didn't do enough, I was not enough, I haven't worked enough, I'm not talented enough. That feels real, right? People connect with this. And I'm sure everyone can point to examples of moments where they've thought this. And so why I want to dispel the myth, for me, is it's a myth worth fighting every time. Your quote-unquote level of success does not mean that you have not done enough. There are some ways I can give you tools, but there's some ways where it's just random. There's some ways where just the world does this thing, right? And persistence is going to get you there, but part of it is really just, if you go next, part of it is anything is doable with the right plan. If you can think kind of critically about what you want, where you want to go, how much you can throw at it, what your resources are, you can make it happen. And late is better than never, right? Doing it slowly is better than not doing it all. But doubting yourself for saying, well, I didn't do enough, which is why I'm not famous enough, why I'm not paid enough, why I'm not whatever, isn't helpful. It doesn't motivate you, doesn't keep you going, and it's not going to make your art happen any faster. So, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that's how I feel about planning your art. That works for big things, like, for example, fighting fascist regimes, right? For example. Or working with your own art, working with your passion. You can't budget for a thing that you haven't thought of, right? You can't practice for a skill or practice for a show that you haven't looked at. You have to look critically at your own art. You have to look at your own understanding of where you are, and then you can face it. You can overcome it. You can make the work that you want to make. So, tips and tools. I've talked about some of the loftier things. I want to have a smaller talk about like just some practical, like 1, 2, 3 things that we can make happen. All right. So first is this. Go forward for me. Thank you. Know your values. Right. So, do you value precision or collaboration? Big audiences or underserved audiences. Right. So you want stadiums, or do you want a room full of people who haven't seen this work? Making art or making money? These are not necessarily in conflict, right? But you need to know what is a good choice for you, to know what a good opportunity is for you. You need to know what is important to you, right? Because there are some people who will sell out stadiums and don't care what they sing and don't care what their message is. And that's a choice. That's okay. Everybody can make that choice. There are people who want to make different choices. But if somebody offers you a stadium show, and they're like, you do this. These are the songs we want you to do. All you got to do, but you're going to sing in front of hundreds of thousands of people. You don't know actually if that's a good opportunity unless you know what is important to you, unless you know what your value is. Frequently we say yes to things we think are good opportunities and are miserable because we don't know what we value, or we have chosen something that is in fact counter to our values but looked shiny and new and good. If you don't know what you value, you won't know what is a good opportunity. So know your values. Also know your strengths. I'm a storyteller. I like talking to people. I like telling stories. I like engaging in this way. I am terrible at developing new work. I always like to say that, anybody familiar with the show Hair, right? I watched that show, and all I could think was, I would have no idea that this show was any good on paper. I wouldn't have. I was like, there's not a plot really. It goes in a variety of different directions. The characters aren't particularly likable, but that's not what makes it a good show. I enjoy the show, but I was just very aware of like, that is not my strength. I would have seen all of that nonsense and been like, nope, not for me. But I can tell a good story. And so knowing my strengths, knowing what I'm good at, and knowing what I'm not good at, allows me to understand, again, what is a good opportunity? What is my next step? Where do I want to build my choices? And lastly, use the tools. There are many tools available to help you build an arts practice. Accounting software, mail managers, project trackers, crowdfunding platforms. There is no reason for you to reinvent the wheel, right? Look for the tools that can solve simple problems for you so you can focus your energy on the big things. This is where my pitch starts, in that at Fractured Atlas, what we do is build these tools. So I'm going to do a brief run through of our programs and how they can help you in service of understanding the tools. So first is fiscal sponsorship. Fiscal sponsorship, so the mechanism of fiscal sponsorship is this. Donors give money to us. We issue a tax receipt to that donor. We can then release the money to you in service of your arts practice. There is an application. We do like to know what activities you're fundraising for, but ultimately, that is the simplified version of what fiscal sponsorship is. You're going to fundraise. You're going to connect with your donors. You're going to try to find people who are interested in what you're doing. Then, through our tools, you will be able to have them donate to us. We assess a fee of 7%. We put the rest in a fund balance for your project. Then you release those funds to pay for your project-related expenses. That is fiscal sponsorship. We are also launching a crowdfunding campaign or a crowdfunding platform so that you can, in the same way that Kickstarter or Indiegogo or any of those other things, the same way that you can generate momentum and energy through crowdfunding, you can do that, but now directly connected to your fiscal sponsorship through us. And all of your packets, you've seen the invitation to become a member of Fractured Atlas. You get a free year of membership for attending SphinxConnect. So be sure to take advantage of that, because that allows you to access our tools. Next is SpaceFinder. SpaceFinder is a tool to connect venues to artists. You can search by all of these criteria, floor type, ambient noise, location, price, rental area. There are so many things that you can use to connect to a venue. I managed to find a space through that. Story I'll tell you in a bit. These are the locations that we are. The gray ones are locations that we are coming to, but this is SpaceFinder. We're in Michigan regionally. We do have a few spaces in Detroit, though. And to get people to join, if there are venues that you like, tell them to sign up. Signing up as a venue is free. So the more venues that are on it, the better it becomes as a resource for everyone. Liability insurance. So liability insurance is really just a tool to help you protect yourself. You can protect your stuff, you can protect your work, you can protect those who are working with you. What's great is because we work with so many artists, we've been able to also communicate with the insurance companies to find things that are otherwise uninsurable. Like, I'm always really proud of the fact that we have Burning Man policies. So literally something that we know is going to be set on fire, you can still insure. That's great, right? That because of how we are trusted, because of our connection with these insurance companies, we want to be able to protect you. You want to be able to make the work that you want to make. So it is definitely something to look at. And lastly, our program is Artfully. Artfully is a ticketing and customer relationship management software. So that means if you have events and you want to know who showed up, you can have door lists, you can save those donor records, you can see who is experiencing your work. If you are fiscally sponsored by us, if you go to the next slide, if you are fiscally sponsored by us, you can also have your donor information go through Artfully. So if people give to you, and are also buying tickets to your work and or experiencing your work for free through the software, you can see all of that and be able to track how are people relating to you. Where is your audience? Because people already know you. You have an audience somewhere. Somebody has already seen something you do. And the way to know that, to be able to assess that resource, is to have a place to put that information. Lastly, I want to talk about developing community. You cannot do this alone. I would like you to repeat that back to me. Remember, I cannot do this alone. Say that.
I cannot do this alone.
Fantastic. It's important to remember. We talked about isolation, right, as a thing that people feel. Artists, and again, this is going to sound worse than I mean it to. Artists are beautiful but not special. And by that I mean we tend to, as artists, start thinking that I am the only one doing this. I am the only one in my space. I am the unique, only special swan of the work I'm doing. And that's not true. And I want you to know that's not true in the most beautiful of ways, right? You are fabulous, and there is no one like you. And there is someone who can understand your needs, right? So you are not an island unto yourself. You have so many things to build community. Everyone, fellow artists, neighbors, your participants here, right? Even me. I'm happy to be a part of your community, right? I told you I want to be internet famous, so I want you to find me, right? I want us to be able to talk about the work you're doing. I believe in the work you're doing. And I'm a working artist, right? I give these talks, I talk to people, but I make art, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about, like my story, what I've done through being connected to Fractured Atlas, but being an artist in community. Everything that has ever happened to me, everything that I've been allowed to do as an artist has been because I've said, this is something I want to do, and somebody heard me and said, we can do that together. SpaceFinder was my first connection to Fractured Atlas before I worked here. I wanted a space, and I was lazy. I didn't want to leave my neighborhood. So I used Space Finder to find a space in my area, and I managed to connect with a person who had a tiny one-room venue named Jack in Brooklyn. And that was 6 years ago. We have done 4 separate productions together now. He helped produce the series I did, reading several lynching plays over a year that was featured on NPR, right? It was just in saying, I want to do a thing. You have a space for me to do that thing in. What can we do together? That has led me to several collaborations, that has led me to making art, and has led me to be able to talk to you all about what it means to make art that is important to me, and to help you hopefully make art that is important to you. So my goal today was to liberate you all from a lot of the things on that side of the screen. And I hope I've given you some tools, something to help address the mindset that these things don't have to stop you from doing your work. Next to me. So, liberating the artist is my goal. I also have business cards. I will be sure to hand them out to you if you want to come talk to me. And now we have time for, I believe, questions. These are also the ways you can get in touch with us. That's our phone number, 888-692-7878. Email support@fracturedatlas.org. If that won't get you directly to me, it will get you to a staff member of Fractured Atlas. And you can always at us on the interwebs at fracturedatlas.org. Thank you all so much for this. This has been wonderful to talk to you. And now I'm open to your questions. On that microphone? Okay. So if you have questions, please come up to the microphone. Also, I can stand here and just talk some more. That works for me too. Hello.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Hi. My name is Kika Wright, and so I've been writing grants for different groups in the city where I live in Baltimore.
Oh, awesome.
And we actually used Fractured Atlas until we got our own 501c3 nonprofit or tax-exempt status. So I'm wondering, after you get the nonprofit status on your own, like what would be the benefit of continuing your Fractured Atlas membership? You know what I mean?
That is a very good question. So I will also say, full disclosure, my theater company is a 501c3 that is physically sponsored by Fractured Atlas. So one of the many things that I enjoy doing, one is insurance. Being able to kind of apply as a group or through Fractured Atlas and its services has just allows you to have access to insurance that you may be too small for. Mm-hmm. Something that is kind of specific to New York, but can be specific to can work for other places. You just have to see is to apply for state funding in New York. There's a lot of registration that you would have to go through. That if you're applying through a fiscal sponsor is less, because the fiscal sponsor does the majority of that registration. That can also be true for other grants. Mm-hmm. There are also some grants that want an organization that has a history of like 5 years or greater, sometimes 3 years or greater. Mm-hmm. And so having a fiscal sponsor that has a history of that, not knowing how long your organization's been there, but that can also be helpful. And artfully, for 501c3s, you can raise donations through it as well as ticketing, so that does combine that for 501c3s as well. Cool. Yes, I think those are all of the benefits, but there can also be a few just like based on what you need.
Yeah. And if no one else has can I ask another question?
Certainly.
Anyone? Yeah. Okay. So the other thing is, so I'm a performing artist, and I just kind of came to fundraising just out of nowhere because I wanted to do the least amount of work and get the most recognition. You know what I mean? So sometimes I hear people, they'll say, oh, if you can't like ask somebody for money, then ask for an in-kind donation or do this and this and this. And I'm wondering if there's like a place on the internet or wherever where all of the tricks are, you know what I mean? Like instead of just having to wait for someone to just like mention something and then I'll be like, oh, in-kind donation, and then look it up. You know what I mean?
No, that's fair. I wish I had like fundraising magic to give you, other than the magic I already offered. But no, there isn't. If it was easier than having conversations, more people would do it, right? I always like to say, throw your creativity at it. You know, what do you, and the people start to think, they get into fundraising, like I have to get in this like fundraising mode, like what is the right way? And really there isn't a right way other than do your research and ask people appropriate questions. And by appropriate, and like by appropriate questions is this, like an inappropriate question for me is what can you do for me?
Yeah.
Right? That is not, I don't think it's ever a good question. Because for me, it puts all the onus on the person who you want something from to like figure out how they can help you. And that's a question, nobody likes to hear that question, right? But if you go to them and say, hey, I am producing this show about X, I see that you sell X, these are the ways that I think we can be helpful to you, or are there ways that we can partner? Like,
Yeah.
that's a question, and that's a question that you would ask to if you were having a conversation with a person, not an entity. That's a conversation that you would have. Don't get so caught up in like I am fundraising and this is my project and that is an organization that you forget that there are people.
Yeah.
You are a person, they are people. Talk to them like people. You'd be surprised what happens. If I have magic, if there's anything that I would say that like helps, is remember there's a person. If you don't know something about like how they can help you, tell them what you do know, and then ask. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to show them that you've done research. You want to show them that this is what I bring to the table. And then say, what can we do from there? And they might say nothing right now. And then, okay. But now you have a question you can take to someone else. Now you have a conversation to start. Or now you can say, you know, we don't give this way, but we give, you know, every quarter. So we're out this month, but like 3 months from now, we'll be fine. Oh, okay. Then you can come back. Yeah. So the tricks aren't so much tricks as like, what would you, if you were a person, talk to another person, how would you talk to them?
Cool.
And or how would you want to be talked to?
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Come up to the mic. Thank you. We can have a line. I like being popular. Hello.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Dana.
Hi, Dana.
And I had a question. I'm a little young. I'm 16 years old.
Fantastic. So am I.
Yeah, oh. Yeah. And I've been performing at venues lately, and I plan to have a career. I'm a cellist.
Nice.
Professionally performing, and I wanted to know how could Fractured Atlas help someone like me at my age, or is this something I want to wait to invest in, like
That is a good question.
instrument?
Because specifically fiscal sponsorship is a contract, you do have to be 18 to enter into contracts. But we're always happy to talk to people. So if you have questions for something you're looking for, but the best advice I could give you, just off the top of my head, is document everything, and follow up with people who say that they want to help you. Like if they're excited about what you're doing, they mean that. Email them, follow up with them. Like now is this great time because at 16 you have so many options. And so anytime somebody says I would like to hear from you, or I would like some resources, like take them. That's what I would offer you.
Also, in my question I had, so when I turn 18 and such, would I be able to like use the fiscal
Yep.
to be able to help provide funds to like, I don't know, maybe get a cello or so, like a
Yes,
expensive one?
that could purchasing equipment. Instruments are equipment. Does count. I believe we are wrapping up, but I do want to get to your question, so I will come to you directly. All right.
Oh, mine's quick and factual. I just want to know what kind of company are you? I mean, what do you tell people? What kind of company you do?
We're a nonprofit tech company that serves artists.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you all for your time.